Hello everyone, welcome into the UL-Monroe offseason. As you can see, Don Baumhauer decided to transfer away and he committed to Navy. He's decided to finish his career elsewhere, knowing he was likely to face a suspension here for the next season. So we're in a pickle. We need to be able to find a new quarterback. We got to figure this out this offseason, especially because number 2 quarterback Tyler Thorne decided to leave and head to North Texas. The weird thing is he's not going to be the starter there. I don't really know why he made this decision. Maybe he'll get to be the starter down the road. Baumhauer is going to be the starter though for Navy, so we're going to be sure to face them next season. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other players that are leaving. Leonard Harris is going to leave along with Cartwright. He played a lot of downs for us. There isn't a whole lot of good players really leaving this team this year. We're going to lose Bennett Galloway. Honestly, he was up and down last year and I wasn't really comfortable with him most of the time. We are going to lose Sean Washington and we're going to also lose Kelby Holmes, and that could be a big loss. Looking at UMass, none of the players we recruited in are transferring away. I was kind of hoping one of them would, but unfortunately they've all decided to stay there. We have an upgrade for Coach Jsi Wint. We're going to go into Motivator and we're going to work on our O-line. It makes the most sense. We're going to try to get this up higher, maybe before the off-season training if we can by some chance, but I'm not sure we'll be able to. Now, taking a look at recruiting, I'm showing you off all the points that we have assigned to players. We have some guys that we have on our board who are transfers, quite a few of them actually. Here's the thing. I'm not sure how good they are and I'm not going to bother to scout them, which is why I'm not going in depth with each guy because I really have nothing more than their star rating and who they are. So basically my plan is for this offseason, I just want to bring in a bunch of guys because I don't feel like our recruiting class is quite strong enough because this team has a lot of holes. We didn't even make it to a bowl game last season. So one of our biggest holes is at quarterback. We're going to bring in Noah Lugo. He's currently a sophomore redshirt, so when he joins our team, he'll be a junior redshirt, which means he has 2 years of eligibility left, and he has a little bit of mobility. He's an improviser, which is something I feel like we really need to bring in, especially with this roster. And we're pretty weak at the quarterback position now. It's basically Reese Mooney, and that's about it. I don't think we have any other guys capable of starting except for the QBs we recruited. So we got to be smart, and we got to recruit guys. Now, taking a look at how we're doing in some of these recruiting battles, some of these guys we really need are corners, receivers, and I think we need a good D tackle. Corners is especially weak, and that's a position that I feel like we are going to be able to get a couple guys to come in. Unfortunately, our top guy is Wilson, and I don't think we're going to end up getting him. He ended up getting a big increase from UTSA, and I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to hold them off. We're going to have to wait and see, though. We have some other guys like Cushenberry, Jim, who we hope can come in and maybe fill a role on this team. We're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. Now we're headed in next week of recruiting. We still haven't received any commitments, which is kind of scary when you look at the board and nothing's really moving. Like, we're sitting at the top of some of these. Parks, we fell to second place. He's a guy that I really liked. Samsela, we're still at top 4. He's a pretty good guy. Spears, we're leading 4. We're behind on Hawk. We're falling behind on Wilson, which is exactly what I feared. These guys were doing okay. Noah Lugo, it looks like we're pulling away, which is big. We need a quarterback in this class. We can't go in with just the guys we have already committed. I know that isn't going to work out. So moving ahead to the next week, again, you can see we didn't get any commits, so we had to adjust our points and our strategy a little bit. We're doing pretty well on our 2 high school recruits that we have left, so we're not going to throw any points on them. We decided to schedule some visits to get some guys locked in. You can see like Wilson, I really was hoping we can get him. Femi Chiu committed. So did Josh Cushenberry, a corner. That's huge. We got Lucas Samsela. We got Andy Spears, a freshman tight end. We got Gregory Jim to come in and play corner. But the biggest one yet was Noah Lugo coming in to play quarterback for us. That's a recruitment we couldn't lose. Problem is, this is the last week of recruiting, so we got to see what we ended up getting. We got our kicker in Elkins, and we got our safety in Ed Way. Elkins has impact dev. Way has just normal dev. I think that's okay. We got Montrell Cologne to commit, even though he had us locked out. He has impact dev. He's a gem. I'm excited to see what we can do with him. Next up is JUCO Jr. Oscar Hasty at guard coming in and committing. He ends up with just normal dev. That's kind of disappointing, but it's good to get O-line depth in here. Then we got a corner in Lane Sabri, who is a 3-star. He's out of Florida. I'm hoping he can come in and compete for us. He has good man coverage. He has some good agility, some decent speed. Looks like his zone's probably going to be pretty weak because it doesn't show up at all, but he has impact dev. Hopefully he can develop. Then we get Lucas Samsela to come in at defensive tackle. He's the junior transfer. He's only going to have him for 1 year. He has just normal dev. We didn't scout him, so you're going to have to wait until later on in the offseason when we go over all of our additions and see just how good he really is. Next up is freshman transfer Andy Spears. Once again, we don't know anything about him, but he's 6'3", 228. He is a vertical threat. I'm excited to bring him in. Then we ended up missing on Dravion Wilson. He did go to UTSA. I was pretty disappointed about this loss. But we got Gregory Jim to play corner. He's a sophomore, 6'1", 190 out of Montana. He's a guy that we don't know anything about. Just normal dev is disappointing, but I'm glad we have him. We need the corner depth. Then we finally get to our quarterback transfer. It's Noah Lugo, 6'2", 195. He's an improviser out of Texas. The thing is, he only has normal depth, and we don't know anything about him, so I'm a little worried about this pickup. Maybe he's not as good as I thought he was. Then we get to freshman transfer Femi Chiu. The thing is with him, he's 6'3", 178. He's a deep threat where we're looking for speed. He only has normal depth, and he's just a 2-star, so I'm a little worried that he's not going to be as good as I hope he is. But as a freshman, I'm hoping he maybe has some upside. Then we get to Josh Cushenberry at corner. He's another freshman. He's 5'11", 205. He's considered a zone corner, but he has star depth. That's huge. Even if he can't develop this offseason, I can't wait to see what he becomes in the future because he has room to grow. We ended up getting the 61st rated recruiting class in the nation. Not the best, not the worst. We finished with 171.65 points. We got 25 commits. 24 of them are 3-stars, and then the 1 2-star, which is the receiver we just talked about. Overall, I'm pretty happy with that class. It's the top class in the Sun Belt. That means good things for the future. And I think that that's going to give us an opportunity to really be able to assert ourselves into the top end of this conference in the future. Recruiting well is the most important thing you can do to have a healthy program. Now, if you're still sticking around, we're about to do position changes and you want to see how these guys' career turn out, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below and follow along on this journey with the UL-Monroe Warhawks. I'd really appreciate it, and I think you guys will find we're going to have a ton of fun as we build this program into the future. I think that we're about to take over the Sun Belt and maybe even college football. Just give us a few years. Looking at Tyreek Worthy, we're going to end up putting him at receiver. It makes the most sense. It's where he's best. 6'4", or 6'5", 214. He's the perfect size to be a big receiver, and he's going to fill a big need for us. Now, looking at Cam Munnerlyn, he's a halfback when we recruited him. And honestly, I think that's where he fits best. That's where we're going to end up putting him, and hopefully he can develop into the future. Next up's Kiki Nwokori. He's a quarterback. There's no way about it. That's where I want him to play. I've been dreaming of getting him in here. He's kind of athletic. He's not fast enough to play any other position, so I do want to get him in here. Next up, we have somebody that something actually happened with. Xavier Nicholson. I ended up choosing to put him at backer because I thought, the high overall, I thought he'd be really good with that size. However, the thing is, I put him at backer and it wouldn't show me what his ratings were. I don't know how good he is. Later on, you'll see that. So he ends up actually going back to halfback, and we'll talk more about that later. Next up, you have Philip Spain, and he is going to end up going to halfback. He's not a very high overall, but I think it's the best place for him to develop. And luckily, we'll be able to redshirt him. I don't think we'll need him this year as we level up 2 times as we advance the week. I'm guessing that's for all the commitments to our team. Now let's go ahead and take a look at upgrades. As you can see, Don Baumhauer remains a 77 overall. I don't think he developed at all, and I don't think Tyler Thorne did either. However, Reese Mooney jumped up to a 76, which is okay, and Greg Levitre's up to a 68 overall, which is good. The thing is, Tyler Thorne and Don Baumhauer both left during the spring transfer portal, so neither one of them are going to be on our team going forward. Looking at JJ Harrell, he's all the way up to an 83 overall. He's now our top receiver. I did not expect that. I thought he was going to transfer out because I was kind of rough on him at the end of the year, but luckily for us, he didn't. And I will say, if we don't lead on him this year and we kind of talk smack about him again, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually leaves this time because it took a little convincing to keep him around to begin with. Don't blame him for that. I was kind of hard on him at the end of the year. At center, Anakra, who's a guy we recruited, is up, and he's now going to be our starter. Right guard, our O-line overall looks okay. We have a freshman redshirt who's a 70 overall starting. Not a high overall, but I think he'll be all right. Jamison Iosu is now our best player at an 84 overall as a sophomore redshirt. We're going to lean on him more. He's still not probably going to play defensive end during our pass rush situations. He's a guy that I'd like to move inside with maybe Kevin Esposito or Devin Darisaw, who didn't develop really at all. Darisaw's just a 70 overall, which really sucks. So he's now number 3, and I'm not sure if I'm going to play him or I'm going to play our transfer. That's going to be up in the air. We're going to have to decide that during spring practices, along with our quarterback position, because of course we don't really know how that's going to play out yet. Unfortunately, it's kind of a wait and see what ends up happening there. Ackle jumps all the way up to a 75 from, I believe he was a 66, which is really good. He's a good player, and he's somebody I expect to be a real strong contributor for us. Blades is our top corner now. We fully expected that. James Hogue at free safety jumped up to an 81 overall as a junior. That's really good, and I'm glad we have him. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Cole Hicks really developed at all, which sucks. He was pretty good last year, but without him developing, he's not going to help us much. Brian Choice, our kicker, really didn't develop at all, so I'm glad we were able to recruit over him and replace him. Now, looking at our punter, he's somebody I don't show off very often. However, he was a 52 overall last year, and he jumped all the way up to a 62. That might help us out a little bit. Now, let's go ahead and spend them upgrades. Since we're not going to be able to get the upgrades for development, we decided to jump back into recruiter. It makes the most sense. Now, let's go ahead and start taking a look at the players we brought in. This is Noah Lugo. He's a 77 overall. he doesn't really have a super high ceiling, so I'm not sure what to expect from him. He only has one more offseason to develop, plus his playing time this year. He could maybe get up into the low to mid 80s. He kind of has a low ceiling. It is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. But he is our best overall quarterback right now, so he's going to have a chance to compete for the starting job right away against Reese Mooney. And also, Hayden Malecki is likely to also get a chance to compete for that job. He's already a 71 overall freshman. He doesn't have a high ceiling, but he's a high enough overall where he might be able to jump in and actually compete for the job. He has decent throw power, not crazy, but decent. He has a little bit of athleticism. That's what I also like about Jsi Wint. Doesn't have the strongest arm, but he has a lot of athleticism, and his accuracy, well, that's pretty spotty and can use a lot of work, but he does have the ability to improve there, along with his IQ. Honestly, though, that's kind of the only part of his game that can improve, so he's maybe going to get to like a 75 overall if I had to guess. And then we got Kiki Nuakori, who's somebody I really like, but he's only a 65 overall. He's a lefty. He comes in with a little bit of a higher ceiling than Puente, I think, so he might be able to reach like an 80, maybe get to like where we were when we had Quincy Kongbo at UMass, but I'm not sure. He's probably a long ways away, but we're going to give him a shot to compete as well. We're basically going to jump into practice and just see what happens with these guys, and I'm going to decide who's the starter from there. Next up, you got Cam Munnerlin at halfback. He's an elusive back with impact dev. Now, he's somebody that doesn't have a high ceiling, but I have a feeling he could contribute right away. Unfortunately, we're kind of short in the backfield this year. We didn't do a great job getting guys who are ready. We didn't land anybody in the transfer portal, and that basically leaves us with only Lester Iverson and Folk, who we had last year, that are even capable players unless somebody breaks out. That means Philip Spain, who's a 62 overall with a high enough ceiling to maybe get into the middle 70s, also could even see the field, because at the end of the day, we have to get guys out on there to play, and we just don't have a whole lot of halfbacks, which is why, like I said, we ended up moving Xavier Nicholson back to halfback later on. Now, taking a look at Montel Colon, he's a guy who has a deal breaker and might transfer away. He's a 68 overall, but I think his ceiling's really, really low. Unfortunately, he's not that good of a player to get, and I don't think he's going to get much better than he is. Then that brings up Tyreek Worthy, somebody I was excited to bring in, and unfortunately, he's in the same boat. He's not going to get a whole lot better. We're looking at a guy who will be low 70s overall, probably at his peak, which is really disappointing. So Amari Sims is a guy we're hoping we can count on. Now, he has a little bit of developing he can do. He might be able to get better than the other two, but I don't think he's going to be that great either, and unfortunately, that puts our receiving core in a bad spot going forward. That's going to bring us to Robbie Sampson, who's somebody with impact dev that I was really excited about. He's a 6'5 freshman receiver. Unfortunately for him, though, he comes in at a 64 overall. And I don't think his ceiling's a whole lot higher than Sims, unfortunately. And that's just disappointing. We needed some of these guys to hit, and none of them actually did. So that brings us to tight end Andy Spears, who we brought in transfer portal. He's a 73 overall, and you really can't expect him to get a whole lot better. He's probably going to end up maybe like a 77 at best, maybe a 78. But we have star dev Malu Yanda, who has a very high ceiling at guard. Now, he's somebody I'm super excited to get in here and work with. He's somebody that's going to be able to develop, and he's going to be somebody we can count on in our O-line to develop going forward and become a star for us. Now, Hakeem Ogbu actually has a pretty high ceiling for being a junior college transfer. We're going to go ahead and redshirt him this year in hopes that he can develop in the next 2 years and actually get to be a starting level guard by the end of his career. Oscar Hasty, well, he has a little bit lower of a ceiling than them guys, but he's actually a pretty good guard at the end of the day. I think he can get into the middle to upper 70s, and I think that'll be good enough to start for us. Matt Fisk at tackle actually has a decent amount of developing he can do. I think he's another guy who can get to the upper 70s, maybe even low 80s by the time he's done developing. Alex Bautista comes in with a very high ceiling, and I didn't really expect this out of him. He's only a 64 overall, and he has a long way to go, but he's somebody we're going to be able to count on to probably get into the upper 80s if I had to guess with that ceiling. We'll have to see if he's able to reach his full potential, though. JD Hazelwood, somebody I'm super excited about, comes in with a reasonably high ceiling, but honestly, I'm a little disappointed. He has a lot of skill caps that are quite restrictive that kind of suck, if you ask me. I was hoping for a little more out of him. Lucas Samsela, transfer, comes in. He has a decently high ceiling. Problem is, we really only have him for a little bit of time, so I don't think he's going to develop that much more for us, but we'll see if he's able to make an impact this year. Soma Putu, the elite linebacker we brought in, comes in with a fantastic ceiling. He's somebody that I think we can really count on going forward, and he's somebody that I'm excited to get on the field and excited to see him do better. He has these weird yellow eyes that I don't know what that's about, but he's going to be a great player for us. Now we're at Xavier Nicholson, and this is what I was talking about. It wouldn't show his ratings at all, so I was worried about future development. So I decided to go ahead, just make him a running back and not risk it. He has a pretty high ceiling at running back, so I'm excited to show that off at a later time in this episode. Next up is Josh Cushenberry. He's a 73 overall, and he has a really high ceiling. I'm super excited we got this guy. I think he can develop a ton at corner. He might end up being one of our best players at the end of the day. Next up's Gregory Jim. He's a 79 overall. I fully expect him to start for us. He's a really good player. Doesn't have the highest ceiling in the world, but he should be able to get into the mid 80s, at least the low 80s, I would say. And then our freshman recruit is Lane Sabri, and he actually has a pretty high ceiling. I'm quite impressed by that. I think he could be in the middle 80s by the end of his career. I would say probably like 82 to 85 if I had to guess, which is pretty good for a team like UL-Monroe. Now looking at safety, Ed Way. He's up next. He only has normal dev, but he has a pretty solid ceiling. I would say I expect him probably in the same range as Sabri, and probably maybe you're on the lower end of that. And then we have Amani Elkins, who has a decent ceiling, but his kick power is never going to get better than 84. His kick accuracy is pretty low as well, like a 71 overall or 72 overall, and I don't think it'll ever get much better than that. He can upgrade it a little bit, but that might make it go into the low 80s if I had to guess. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our schedule. We're going to open up against Jacksonville State, who's just slightly better than us. Then we're going to take on Don Baumhauer and Navy at home, who we should be able to beat. And then it's New Mexico after that. That should be a W. Then we get to play App State. Then we get to take on Troy in a rematch. Then it's Georgia Southern. And then we get South Alabama, who I'm excited to be able to play against. I think they're a really good team that gave us a heck of a hard time last year. Then it's Georgia State. We haven't seen them yet, and I'm excited to play them. I think they have some cool uniforms. Along with Coastal Carolina, we get to head there, which means we get to see that teal turf, and it's probably going to be one of our toughest matchups of the season. Then we get to try to get revenge against Old Dominion, who beat us and basically ended our hope at going to a bowl game. Then it's Marshall, and then we're going to finish up against Louisiana at the end of the year in our rivalry matchup. I'm excited for this season. I feel pretty confident in this team. I think we're going to be all right, honestly. My goal this year is to obviously go to a bowl game, but I'm shooting for 8 victories. Do you think we're going to be able to get there? Because I think we can. I'm LDJ11. I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. I'm out.